Welcome back to Green is Good, and I am so excited and honored to have my good friend and just one of the best guys I've ever worked with in my life, and Kevin Anton's here today, and he's the Chief Sustainability Officer of Alcoa. For a shameless plug, he also is a board member of Electronic Recyclers International, which I get the honor of being the CEO of. Welcome to Green is Good, Kevin Anton.
Hey, thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Well, Kevin, you've been on before, and, you know, instead of me reading your amazing bio, besides all the great work you've done, last year you won the Charles Martin Hall Award as the Aluminum Ambassador Advocate for American Metal Markets. You've done so many things and been awarded so many great, accolades. I want you to share your journey a little bit on how you became the first Chief Sustainability Officer at Alcoa in 125 years.
Yeah, sure, John. So as you know, John, I really have a financial background. So I've worked in metals and mining for some 30-odd years in various financial roles, anything from the most junior positions of paying my boss's expense reports early on through mergers and acquisitions and strategic planning, a short stint in commercial where I ran the sales and marketing and trading operations for Alcoa's commodity business, and then a return to finance through the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. I was leading the finance organization for Alcoa's commodity business. And when we came out of that, and one of the nice things we did at Alcoa through the financial crisis is we didn't take our eye off the ball on we need to solve for the short term, but we also still need to be solving for the long term. And during that time period, we launched a sustainability steering committee, and Klaus Keinfeld, our CEO, asked me to take the leadership role of that committee, and we did that for 2009 and into 2010, and then Klaus and I had a discussion, say, hey, let's take this and put even more focus on it, Alcoa. And Kevin, I'd like you to become the first CSO in Alcoa's history. And we had a little conversation about it. I said, yeah, this actually fits really nicely for where I am in my career and what my interests are. So, and starting with Alcoa's great sustainability reputation and track record, it's kind of the perfect job.
It is, and you are the perfect person for that job. And for our listeners out there, you know, just if you can follow what Kevin has done, he has a great Twitter account, Kevin Anton at Twitter, and he is just doing great things at Alcoa, and he's going to share them today. So I'm so glad you joined us, Kevin, and I'm so glad our listeners are out there because this is going to be a special segment. Tell me a little bit about Alcoa and sustainability. You know, it's almost like peanut butter and jelly. These go so well together. Alcoa's always been into sustainability. Tell me a little bit about that whole focus there now.
Yeah, so John, it's really important to understand that we are the largest integrated aluminum company in the world. That means we start with mining and go all the way through to the products you see, like the aluminum beverage can, like wheels on trucks. So we have a very wide expanse here. And let's talk a little bit about some of the products we make.
Sure.
So aluminum in transportation is great, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But you think about the trucks you see on the road and how we can drive down the weight of those trucks and drive up the fuel efficiency. The aluminum can, infinitely recyclable. So that aluminum can that you had yesterday afternoon, maybe when you were out in the park or on the beach or at home with your family, you put that in the recycle bin yesterday afternoon, and we'll have that back on the shelf before the 4th of July as a new beverage can.
Wow.
And then we recognize that we have a stewardship obligation. We are a mining company. We do have large facilities around the world. And we take incredible pride that the areas that we're mining today will be revegetated with original species by next year.
You know, when you
so we don't leave a legacy behind.
When you talk about infinite recyclable, can you just share with our listeners what that really means and how much aluminum is recycled with regards to what you're really doing?
Yeah, and the nice thing about aluminum as compared to other materials, if you think about when you recycle aluminum, the basic material doesn't lose any of its properties. So if it's an aluminum can for the first time or the 50th time, it still is just as strong, just as resilient as ever. Same thing in automobiles, same thing in buildings. If you look at some of the other materials, like the plastics, like the paper, like steel, they need to go through a major transformation to then have a second life. And often the second life is a downgrade of the first life. For us to recycle aluminum, all we have to do is use 5% of the energy that we used to make aluminum the first time, and then it's back in place, ready to go for its second, third, fourth, fifth life.
So when you recycle aluminum, it really sets the watermark. It's a 95% or so energy savings.
Yeah. And then the other thing, John, we like to talk about is how much aluminum is recycled.
Yeah.
And 65% of aluminum cans get recycled. And the benchmark, if you look at glass or plastic, is probably closer to 30%. If you look at aluminum in buildings and aluminum in cars, they both have recycle rates approaching 90% or more.
Got it.
So we're keeping aluminum out of the landfills. So we're proud of that, and there is a larger market for recycled aluminum than there is recycled aluminum available.
So, Kevin, you were involved with finance for years, and you've been the CFO of many divisions, and now you're the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer. Talk a little bit about where sustainability interacts and actually crisscrosses with finance and is really going green good for the bottom line.
Yeah, and that's a great question, John. And when I started in the sustainability role, a lot of the NGOs and a lot of my fellow chief sustainability officers who maybe had a different background, maybe more of a communications background, maybe more of an environmental background or a policy background than I did, they welcomed me because the sustainability folks understand that there's a great business case for sustainability. What they don't have is necessarily the language of the CFO. So that's kind of what I bring, and one of the joys of me in this position is I can bridge all the great things that are happening on the sustainability front, help convert them to dollars and cents and say, yes, there is a business case for sustainability, whether it be projects that reduce water consumption, projects that increase energy, or assessing new markets. Got
it. So, Kevin, your Alcoa is massive. I mean, it's 61,000 people approximately across 30 different countries. How do you not only create these great sustainability programs and activities here in the United States, but then how do you populate them and drive the message across your entire business?
Yeah. Well, we've got, if you look at Alcoa has been run under Klaus, we really have a couple key strategic business priorities. And one of them is capitalizing on the Alcoa advantage. And what we say, that's the franchise value of the parent company. And what we do there is we've got lots of processes, whether it be human resources, procurement, financing, where we take the same processes and deploy them across the world. We've got mechanisms to identify new best practices and then make them standard practices. So we've got this infrastructure for doing everything and passing best practices across the world. So when I came into this role, part of what I did was just build on that infrastructure. So people ask me, do we have a Kevin, what's your sustainability strategy? I said, well, we don't actually have a sustainability strategy. What we've done is we've embedded sustainability into the business strategies of each of our operating locations and businesses and just make it part of the fabric. And then, like any good manufacturing company, we're very metrics driven. So we've established the appropriate metrics at each of our businesses, so we then have a way to manage and measure their performance.
So when we talk about sustainability and aluminum, talk a little bit about, you touched on it earlier in terms of cans and trucks and then transportation and cars. Talk a little bit about how, as the world becomes more sustainable and we all drive greener cars or want to fly in lighter airplanes with greater fuel efficiency, how aluminum plays such an important and critical role in the greening of the world.
Yeah, thanks, John. And I think one of the examples I like to use is truck wheels. So you think when you drive down the interstate, keep an eye out, you'll see a shiny, bright wheel passing you by. That odds are that's an Alcoa wheel. And the way we go to market with that product is we've got a little online web tool we make available to the trucking companies, and it's a product called the Calculator, and it allows the trucking companies to go in, put their own data into the system, and calculate out, this is what I get in GHG savings, this is what I get in fuel savings, this is what I get in maintenance and tire savings, and allows them to just see the whole value proposition aluminum brings. If you're talking in aviation, 90% of the alloys on airplanes ever flown started with Alcoa.
Oh my God!
And now carbon fiber is all the rage, and that was the next step the airlines went to kind of get the next step change in fuel economy. Well, that drove Alcoa back into its R&D facility. And we've now come up with aluminum lithium alloys that can be even lighter and stronger than the carbon fiber. So we're kind of playing hopscotch here with technology.
Hey, but let's go back to the calculator. So for our listeners out there that want to employ this great tool, they could just go to your website, alcoa.com, and find the calculator?
Yes, they can.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is just so you're using the internet technology with regards to leveraging that for people's greater good to understand how much they could save using your new technology with regards to Alcoa wheels.
Yes, and it's absolutely. And typically, we do sell a premium product, but typically the payback is less than 2 years.
Wow! So the ROI, if you're going to use Alcoa wheels, is about 2 years.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about though all these new cars that are coming out at Ford and at GM and all these great iconic brands. The greening of the car industry. How does Alcoa play a huge role with regards to that?
Yeah, and first of all, we've got the new CAFE standards in the U.S., which are driving the automotive companies to make their cars more efficient. But then we've just looked at some data that we had, a couple studies that recently came out, and as recently as 2008, just slightly more than 50% of consumers put fuel economy as the number one driver in making a car choice or a light truck choice.
Wow.
That number is now over 80% in 2012. So the consumers are now pulling for this, which is fantastic. It's forcing or driving the automotives to see this as a competitive advantage.
Right.
As a result, they're looking at every option to drive fuel economy. And we've been talking to the automotives for the last decade about all the things that we can do with aluminum. Well, now with this whole change in regulation and consumer demand, they're knocking on our door. So we're getting phone calls and visits from all three of the OEMs domestically and around the world. All the OEMs are calling us. So big thing we're going to be seeing in the future model years, more aluminum sheet in the products, in doors, in door liners, in trunk hoods, trunks lids, in hoods, the body in white, as the automotive folks call it.
So that makes the cars lighter and makes them more fuel efficient.
Yeah, it makes them lighter, makes them more fuel efficient, and we believe with an improvement in safety, too.
Amazing.
Reduce the mass of the car. It's easier. It's quicker to stop than you can stop today.
Hey, for our listeners out there, if you've just joined us, we're so thankful to have Kevin Anton on with us today. He's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Alcoa, and if you want to learn more about Alcoa and all the great things they're doing with regards to the world of sustainability, go to alcoa.com. They have a great website. I'm on it right now. You click on to the sustainability button, and it's just there's a myriad of opportunities and thought leadership positions that they take that it can inspire us all. Kevin, talk a little bit about Alcoa and the Dow Jones Sustainability Index and your being included year after year after year, and why that's so important and that's such a great indicator of what you guys really are about and what your DNA really is.
Yeah, we're proud of it. We are the sector leader for the Dow Jones Global Sustainability Index. We've been included in Dow Jones Sustainability Indexes for 11 years running, and we think that puts us in a very unique company to be able to say that. And we like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. They have a very, very rigorous process, a very database process. It drives to transparency. It drives to accountability. And those are things that are right in our sweet spot. So we really put a lot of time and effort into it. We think it's a leading indicator of where the world is going. And because it's not a static index, the requirements change and get harder and harder every year. And if you're not on top of it, you can end up out of it. So, and it's one of the key measures. It comes out about 4 a.m, and I will tell you, I'm awake, waiting for that email to see did we make it and where did we make it in it.
You're like George Clooney waiting for the Academy Award nomination.
Exactly, and then the immediate response are forwarding that note to our CEO because he's also watching.
Hey, so I'm going to take a little break from aluminum per se, and I also want to talk about some of your other great work in the communities that you do. So, for instance, Alcoa is known for taking some plants and reinventing their traditional aluminum recycling properties into new and wonderful new lives. Can you explain about what you've done in that sector?
Yeah, and I'll talk about 2 of them, John.
Okay.
One that is in Troutdale, Oregon, which is pretty much complete, and another one that sits in Baden, North Carolina, which you have some firsthand experience in.
Right.
So, first of all, in Troutdale, it was a World War II vintage aluminum factory that Alcoa acquired when it acquired Reynolds in 2000. And the plant was pretty much shut down or in the process of shutting down when we acquired it. So we worked with the Port Authority out there in Troutdale, the local government, the community, and we were able to redevelop the site. And now it is a FedEx distribution terminal, hundreds of millions of dollars invested, probably 1,000 direct jobs plus untold indirect jobs from that. So we've been able to actually turn this into a phoenix. And we're proud that the U.S. EPA sponsored award for Best Brownfield Development a couple of years back is called the Phoenix Award, and we won it for that site.
That is so great. So you took an old property, a legacy Alcoa property, and you recycled it.
Yeah, some people would think of these legacy properties as liabilities. We actually think of them as opportunities.
That's so wonderful.
We have great logistics, great workforces available, and we just have to find the match with the new use. And the second one we're working on is in central North Carolina, a site that Alcoa had operated for 100 years.
Wow.
And unfortunately, a few years back, we had to shut it down. So what we're in the process now is repurposing the site. And we've got an engineering firm located there. We've got 2 or 3 folks we're talking about now of coming in, generally green tech type companies.
Right.
And then our baseload tenant, John, as you know, is ERI. Where we took a 150,000 square foot facility that used to cast aluminum.
Right.
And now it has become the state-of-the-art modern electronics recycling plant.
Yeah, and that's thanks to Kevin. A little truth in advertising here. Kevin, we were their first tenant in Baden, and it is one of the most wonderful properties we've ever been in. We're so proud of it, and we're going to become the largest Southeast e-waste recycling facility thanks to Alcoa and Kevin Anton's vision. And Baden, North Carolina, if you haven't had a chance to go there before, go there now. And if you're looking for a great industrial place to open up your business, please contact Kevin, because that location is just one of the premier locations in the southeast part of the United States. Kevin, I'm going to go back to aluminum now. Talk a little bit about growth. We talked a little bit about what you've done now with the R&D to combat the carbon with regards to airplanes. Talk a little bit about transportation, trucks, and where are you guys focused? Not where the hockey puck is today, but where's the puck going?
Yeah. Well, John, just to put a backdrop to that, as you know, I've been in the metals and aluminum business for 30-plus years, and we've traditionally seen that aluminum grows at GDP rates. Okay. But there's been a decoupling over about the past 5 years. We're now growing at double GDP.
Double GDP.
Yeah, and why is that? And that's because of the great value proposition from the material, and very, very much a sustainability-driven and efficiency-driven one. So our big growth right now is in the automotive sector, and all conversations here will come back to automotive because it's so exciting for us. So what we did, I talked before about how the OEMs called us up.
Sure.
We built an expansion on our Davenport, Iowa rolling mill, about $300 million coming online later this year. When we put the shovel in the ground, the facility was already sold out. Since then, we've broken ground in Saudi Arabia at our joint venture company for another auto expansion. And then I'm really proud because I'm talking to you today from Knoxville, Tennessee, and we have a large rolling mill here. And over the last few days, we just announced that we were going to do a similar expansion to the one we did in Davenport here in Knoxville. And the growth is phenomenal, and we will now see aluminum intensive vehicles in the parking lot when you go to the mall. In the past, it had traditionally been the high-end cars like the Jaguars or the Audi A8s. This is going to be run-of-the-mill, inside everybody's reach to have an aluminum-intensive vehicle.
That is awesome. You know, Kevin, we're down to the last 3 minutes or so, and I know, you know, there's many other chief sustainability officers or chief sustainability officers in waiting that listen to this show. Talk a little bit about what other companies can learn from the great activities that you've done and created and you're driving over at Alcoa with regards to sustainability.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to look at it, John, and I start first with leadership. Alcoa has a board of directors that has recognized sustainability as an important success factor for our organization. So even last week, just met with the board, and at every board meeting there is a time carved out to discuss what's going on in the sustainability world. So I've got incredible sponsorship from the board. I've got incredible sponsorship from Klaus. But that's only part of the problem, but part of the solution. So we've done great top-down, but we also then do a lot of programs from the bottom up to get our employees engaged. We have a volunteer program that we work very, very hard. So last year, 60% of the Alcoa employees took part in a volunteer activity related to the environment or education in their community.
My gosh.
Yeah, right now we're working with our employees on wellness and trying to help create a structured environment to make give our employees the opportunity to change their lifestyles and make themselves healthier. So if you've got leadership from the top sending a message,
right,
and lots of engagement programs from the bottom coming up, creating opportunities for suggestions, creating lots of opportunities for people to improve their community, their workforce, their product. It all comes together in the middle, and that's what kind of allows us to be on the Fortune Most Admired or the Dow Jones Sustainability Index or Maplecroft for innovation. So it's great when you get some external recognition, but the real key is get that bottom workforce engagement and get everybody involved.
We're down to the last minute, Kevin, and a couple things. What do you want our listeners to walk away with today about Alcoa and aluminum? What are just the one or two highlights?
Okay, I think it's a growth market.
Yep.
We're bringing sustainable solutions. Aluminum is the ultimate recycled product, and I think one of the things your listeners, and I think I'm probably talking to the converted already, is I just want to make sure that everybody recycles that aluminum can. For all the great statistics we have, there's still $1 billion worth of aluminum ends up in landfills in the U.S. every year, and the U.S. is quite frankly lagging many, many other countries in its recycling rate and in recycling infrastructure. So that's my personal plea to everybody.
Thank you.
Don't throw it out.
Thank you, Kevin. And not only you are amazing, but you are a great friend of mine and a great friend of the environment. Watch Kevin Moore on Twitter, and you can go see more about Alcoa at alcoa.com. Kevin Anton, you are truly living proof that green is good.